Hey there! How did you mark Freedom Day yesterday? The 28th anniversary of our first democratic election was a muted affair. Maybe that's because we're still reeling from the latest round of load shedding plus the KZN floods. We break down the latest on those issues in this edition and remind you of the strides our country takes each day, from our successes in the fight against HIV to local companies doing amazing work with lab grown meat. Oh, and does producing billionaires count as a victory for South Africa? If so, maybe we ought to be celebrating Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter this week, although the news has attracted a lot of controversy. Keep listening for more on that and the rest of the news you really do need to know, brought to you by myself, Roshni Pillay, and the Explained Koza team. Our take, Eskom versus government, a hot mess. The heated exchange between a parliamentary oversight body and Eskom board member Busisiwe Mavuso is more than just a war of words. It reveals a great deal about the broader issues within the governance of South Africa's parastatals. Now, what happened was that Mavuso, who is also the respected CEO of Business Leadership South Africa, was treated like a naughty schoolgirl when she pushed back against questions by the committee that tried to lay all the blame for South Africa's energy crisis at the current leadership's door. Now, Parliament's finance watchdog, the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, known as SCOPA, held a meeting with Eskom last Friday after assessing the issues at the Medupi and Kusile power stations in light of the latest round of load shedding. Now, Mavuso told SCOPA that the board and Eskom CEO Andre de Ruyter could not be the fall guys for the ANC-led government. The reality of the matter is that this is not our mess, Mavuso was reported to have said. After a critical and annoyed response from SCOPA chair, Mhluleko Nhlengwa, Mavuso left the meeting. The Public Enterprise Department then laid into her as well, describing her conduct as regrettable and unbecoming for a board member, Business Day reported. Now, the moment made headlines with most in Mavuso's corner. Nhlengwa, who is an IFP MP, has since apologized to Mavuso for handling the situation badly. The larger issue is that state-owned enterprises like Eskom have long been subject to political interference and poor management appointments. A combination of state capture, failure to timelessly build new generating capacity, delays in adopting renewable energy, and decades of general government mismanagement and interference have led to the current crisis. But the current management team under Mavuso must also be held to account. What is going on with the maintenance we keep hearing about, and why aren't we seeing results? As Business Day reports, De Ruyter and the board bear responsibility for the fact that the risk has not diminished but increased. But it's also certainly true, as Mavuso said, that the ANC-led government has responsibility as well. The big story, Musk's Twitter purchase sparks free speech furor. It's happened. South African-born billionaire Elon Musk has acquired Twitter for a whopping $44 billion. The deal, which many have described as a hostile takeover, was finalized on Monday, effectively turning Twitter into a private company and giving Musk full control over the social media platform that had 338.6 million monthly global users in 2021. That's relatively small, but Twitter enjoys an outsized influence with global leaders. So why has the Tesla and SpaceX CEO boss decided to purchase one of the least successful social media platforms, and what can we expect to materialize from this move? The tech mogul says that he wants to restore the principles of free speech to the platform. But freedom of speech is a bit of a misnomer. As The Atlantic points out, conservatives are hoping this will mean a platform on which conservative speech is favored and liberal speech receives less space. Conservatives have opposed several recent developments on Twitter, such as the crackdown on misinformation, most notably regarding anti-vax messaging and misinformation about COVID-19. The platform's decision to ban former U.S. President Donald Trump after the January 6 riots in which his supporters stormed the Congress has also angered conservatives. We think the censorship of harmful content and misinformation is a no-brainer, but many disagree. There's been a right-wing exodus from the platform, with many boycotting Twitter in favor of platforms that are committed to freedom of speech, such as Getter, Parler, and Donald Trump's own Truth Social. But none of these new spaces have gained much traction. Could this hostile bid be a move to turn Twitter into the platform conservatives really want? Musk also has a shady track record of artificially inflating Tesla stock's prices through his Twitter account by manipulating market reactions. In fact, Musk began acquiring Twitter shares on the 31st of January, but only announced his then 9.1% acquisition on the 4th of April, which led to its stock value experiencing its largest intraday surge since its IPO in 2013. This led to accusations of unethical practices. It's Charlie Staff from the Pretoria-born billionaire. Critics will watch his next move very closely as he starts to lead Twitter. And the big news in South African politics this week is that the ANC Women's League has officially been disbanded. The ANC's top decision-making body between elective conferences met for 2 days this week and emerged having made some big decisions. The most significant development, which party spokesperson Pule Mabe confirmed to the SABC, is that the party's recent step-aside rule has been amended to bar criminally charged members from standing for any leadership positions in the party or government. This is a big deal given recent events that saw people facing murder and corruption charges embarrassingly elected as key party officials in Mpumalanga and KwaZulu-Natal. We can probably breathe a sigh of relief knowing that guys like Ace Magashule and Batebile Dlamini won't return to taint South Africa's governing structures again. Speaking of convicted perjurer Dlamini, it's been in the works for over a month, but the ANC Women's League, which she leads, has been disbanded. In recent years, the League has come to be seen by many as a spent force, but its key role in dismantling apartheid should not be forgotten. Members of the League were active in the Defiance campaign and the adoption of the Freedom Charter. Sadly, the last few years have tarnished its history. Some of the issues at play include Dlamini's 5-year term in office has long expired. No national conference has been held over the past 2 years, reportedly due to the pandemic. And an earlier ANC Women's League report showed that the structure has no functioning branches, regions, or structures in most provinces, the Mail and Guardian has reported. Now, the ANC Youth League will be replaced by a yet-to-be-established national task team, similar to the one that replaced the also now defunct ANC Youth League. Members of the ANC Women's League have blamed its structural woes on dwindling financial support from the ANC, but that does not excuse the League's decision to back dodgy leaders like Dlamini. The party, meanwhile, will be hoping that these decisions impress voters ahead of the 2024 general elections. It needs to be seen to contain and cure its internal corruption epidemic or risk losing its hold on power. Let's see what voters think. Onto some global business news. Netflix frets amid subscriber drop. Netflix investors are getting very worried. The streaming behemoth has seen its first drop in subscribers in a decade. Instead of gaining 2.5 million new subscribers as planned in the first quarter of this year, it lost 200,000. A big part of that was thanks to the company's withdrawal from Russia in response to the invasion of the Ukraine and related sanctions. This saw a loss of 700,000 subscribers in the first quarter, the Conversation reported. But growth elsewhere meant that the net loss was the 200,000 figure that made headlines. The real issue is that it's nowhere near the growth the company had planned for. Of course, there's also much greater competition than when Netflix first captured eyeballs en masse. Canadian publication Screen Rant points out that while Netflix, which has been on a winning streak for a very long time, is losing relevance and popularity as other sites like HBO Max, Hulu, and Amazon Prime enter the scene. As Screen Rant puts it, Netflix really doesn't have much more room to grow. Now, Netflix has responded to the slow and sustained losses by revisiting its model. This could be bad news for subscribers, as it may include an increase in prices, the introduction of ads, and a crackdown on password sharing between family and friends to prevent piracy issues, basically what DSTV did to us. The content itself is also being called into question. The quality can be subpar compared to other platforms, and Netflix has also come under fire for pulling shows off the site if they don't quickly gain traction in time, which sucks for those of us who enjoy unpopular shows. Netflix fans, take heart. This likely won't be the end of the platform. Its dynamics may shift, though, and we'll be watching with a box of popcorn. Onto some South African health news. Just 2 decades ago, HIV in South Africa was effectively a death sentence. We've come a long way thanks to civil society groups that forced Thabo Mbeki's denialist administration to provide life-saving treatment, and the scientists who have worked tirelessly to develop a range of treatments. UNAIDS estimates that the provision of antiretroviral treatments since 2004 has saved more than 1.3 million lives in South Africa. Now, one of the world's leading HIV researchers, South African Professor Linda Gale Becker, has called for health authorities to focus their efforts on providing PrEP so it becomes as readily available as fast food. Now, what is PrEP? Think of it as the closest thing we have to an HIV vaccine. It stands for pre-exposure prophylaxis. Taking this oral medication daily has proven highly effective at preventing HIV infection. It has commonly been used among high-risk groups like sex workers and injecting drug users. But it's been especially useful, research shows, in preventing infection in girls aged between 15 and 16. Now, Becker, speaking during a Twitter space hosted by health journalism experts Becky Sisa, says that it's time for PrEP to go mainstream. We need fast PrEP, like fast food. PrEP should be available at many points in many ways. PrEP is not a luxury in this country. Our HIV burden makes it a top priority, Becker said. The good news is that PrEP's availability is slowly but steadily rising since it was first introduced in public facilities in 2016. A total of 450,666 public healthcare users in South Africa have been given HIV prevention pills, Becky Sisa reports. The treatment is another useful arrow in our HIV fighting quiver, and an important way for people to take responsibility for their own and their partner's health. Onto the KZN floods, we're still counting the costs. The rains have eased up for now, but the costs keep mounting after the floods in KwaZulu-Natal, parts of the Eastern Cape and the Northwest 2 weeks ago. The KZN government has put the estimated total cost of flood damage at approximately $17 billion. Infrastructure took the biggest knock. Damages to process rail networks, for example, will cost the government nearly 3 billion rand after almost 300 kilometers of processed railways were damaged. The death toll has plateaued, but it's still serious. More than 430 lives were lost, and thousands of people remain destitute after their homes were damaged or completely washed away. The floods were the worst natural disaster South Africa has seen in recent history. Last week we told you that many feared disaster relief resources would be misappropriated. The president noted the backlash this week, saying it is a source of great shame. You think? During a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the Council of Provinces this week, Ramaphosa said that the flow of funds would be audited in real time to guard against corruption. The most urgent issue now, though, is to help communities that are without water and electricity. Tankers are reportedly on their way to desperate communities, but critics say it's taking too long. A lack of water brings the risk of further health crises and keeps businesses in the affected region from getting back on their feet. On to some international news. South Africa dances this two-step around Russia and Ukraine. Last week was the first time President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky since the Eastern European country was invaded by Russia on the 24th of February. The conversation came after Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa publicly complained about our government's failure to engage with the Ukraine since the start of the war. South Africa remains controversially neutral on the conflict. It has abstained from voting in 3 UN resolutions on the matter, cementing its reputation as a quiet supporter of Russia. Not that we're getting anything worthwhile for the support. Professor William Gumede, who in 2013 wrote the book South Africa in BRICS, pointed out this week that our fellow BRICS nations, Brazil, negotiated with Russia to reduce the price of fertilizer in exchange for its support. China did the same for the price of oil, and India for oil and weapons. South Africa, Dololo. Our neutral stance is instead damaging our economy and reputation as a whole. Still, the government is doubling down. Presidential Security Advisor Sidney Mufamadi this week distanced himself from a White House transcript of his call with his U.S. counterpart, Jake Sullivan. The note claimed that Mufamadi said there was a need for an immediate end to Russia's aggression. Mufamadi said he agreed that cooperation was needed to move forward, but said that South Africa remained neutral. As Gumede points out, by now being silent in the face of Russia's war on a sovereign country, Ukraine, South Africa has lost its self-worth, its dignity, and ultimately its power. On to some sport news, how not to tackle racism in cricket. Way back in 1978, English rock band 10cc released Dreadlock Holiday, a song whose chorus has made it a favorite at cricket pitches across the world. I don't like cricket. I love it. Fast forward to 2022, and South African cricket fans wish they could just focus on loving the game, but boredom shenanigans, along with troubling tales of racism and favoritism, have detracted from on-field performances. This week, Cricket South Africa's former director of cricket, Graham Smith, was cleared by 2 independent arbitrators of charges of racial discrimination. The charges arose after the CSA's tough and sometimes emotional social justice and nation-building project hearings, during which local cricket legends like Makaya and Tini alleged they'd been victims of racism at the hands of fellow players and administrators. The project's ombudsman, Advocate Dumisa Nsebeza, found that Smith unfairly discriminated on the basis of race against Enoch Nekwe when appointing Mark Bauscher as Proteas men's head coach in December 2019, Sports 24 reported. After this finding, CSA charged former Proteas captain Smith, who chose not to reapply for the director of cricket role when his contract ended last month. Now, the independent arbitrators cleared Smith of racism allegations linked to his appointment of Boucher, as well as finding that he was not racially prejudiced towards former teammate Tami Kgolekile when they played together. Boucher is not off the hook, though. He was implicated in Sebeza's report and has been charged with gross misconduct by the CSA. And Smith's win does not magically mean that racism is not an issue. The experiences shared by Ntini and others still require a serious reckoning. South African cricket needs to take a firm stance against discrimination and ensure that its pitches are safe, happy spaces for all who want to play the sport. Finally, a hunk of beef, but not from the farm. Old MacDonald had a lab. The Mzansi Meat Company, a Cape Town-based cultured meat company, has successfully created viable meat that smells and tastes like the real thing. By the way, culture does not mean that the meat is well-spoken and comes from old money, just that it was grown in a lab. After 2 years of research, the company has made enough cultured meat to make a meal. Technically, while the meat originates from the fat and muscle cells of a beef cow, it was grown completely in a lab in Woodstock, Cape Town. This is an environmental boon. Lab-grown meat uses drastically less water and land than more traditional methods. It also decreases the amount of methane produced by a herd of cows. Co-founders Brett Thompson and Jay van der Walt started the company in 2019, hoping to help people eat more sustainably. Globally, many companies are working on similar products. While it could be a few years before cultured meat ends up on your plate, it's slowly becoming a reality. In 2020, Singapore made history by becoming the first country in the world to approve the sale of a cultured meat product set to be used in chicken nuggets. At $15 or 239 Rand per meal, that's a bit too rich for our tastes, but experts believe that with more players entering the cultured meat market, the costs per meal could drop. This is great news considering that we have just celebrated Earth Day 2022. This year's theme was Invest in Our Planet. It's great to see a local company doing just that. That's it from us at The Wrap, an award-winning product of Explain.co.za. Simple news summaries for busy people. The Wrap is sponsored by Explain's agency division. We specialize in content marketing for purpose-driven organizations, often with a pan-African reach. Mail info at Explain.co.za for a quote. Meanwhile, remember to share the love. Tell your friends to sign up for the updates at explain.co.za/subscribe. Till next time, goodbye from the team.